This channel isn't really known for movie content. Well, not content people like, anyway. But I wanted to talk about the use of AI in film restorations, because we don't get much time to discuss these things in advance. AI has potential to do a lot of great things, but also a lot of harm, and it's moving so fast that we've been discovering what and who it's going to break in real time as it's happening. James Cameron recently gave us a shot across the bow for another application of AI: Hollywood film remasters. Cameron was already known for producing one of the most disappointing 4Ks in the history of the format with Terminator 2, a hyper-processed mess with enough grain reduction to turn characters into cartoons, and so much teal that the original colors have been terminated from this timeline.
Terminated fucker.
His new 4Ks take the revisionism to a new level by incorporating Park Road's AI upscaling. Peter Jackson developed this tech to make low-quality war footage look more like modern video for the sake of better realism. It was used in the Beatles documentary Get Back for the same reason. You could argue that it's impressive that the AI cleans up such old footage this well. You could also argue that it looks like creepy, uncanny digital shit. Enhancing found archival footage is one thing, but some people would argue that this process is antithetical to what 4K movie restorations are about. My source on that is me. Me people would argue that. The best 4K releases tend to follow a pretty simple template. Clean and scan the negative, repair any obvious signs of damage, and restore the colors to match the original grading, with as little meddling beyond that as possible. The process shouldn't be about modernizing the style or forcing the film to look like digital video. 35mm film was capable of incredible picture quality, and 4K is the first home format capable of delivering most of that detail. That should be good enough. A well-done 4K is like having a pristine copy of the original negative to watch in your own home, with the full data from that celluloid, grain and detail alike, digitally preserved forever. And that's the problem with deep learning algorithms. They can't preserve details. They make their best guess about what an object is supposed to be, then pull new details out of their digital assholes and smear them across the screen. This is a bit technical, I know, but try to keep up. True Lies is the best demonstration of why this remastering approach was a horrendously bad idea. Faces regularly become host to a menagerie of parasites, burn scars, and porcelain cracks. Lines are oversharpened to the point of making Arnie look like crinkled leather, and Tom Arnold, a spectacle to behold in his prime, looks to be in the early stages of Emperor Palpatineism. The AI inserts these details because it doesn't have a great grasp on human skin yet. Keyword yet. Not only does this fake detail suck, it has no temporal stability. Faces phase between AI over-sharpening and soft blurriness from one second to the next. Features like eyelids bizarrely cut through out-of-focus shots with razor clarity. It seems the algorithm was able to recognize that something was a face and drew googly eyes onto it regardless of whether it made sense relative to the rest of the frame. Hair always looks like a video game render, some kind of digital wig applied to the actors' heads, and these synthetic details also remain uncannily sharp when the actor is otherwise blurred by motion. The AI tries its best with distant faces, but always renders them as if in the midst of possession by a squishy demon. Any unusual lighting conditions or obstructions confuse the results. An eyeball briefly melts like a Salvador Dali clock, or warps along with the edges of smoke lines, and it's hard to shake the feeling that pupils are going wrong in several ways at once. And of course, you get a few fucked up hands. AI was supposedly going to deliver next-generation grain removal, able to reduce noise without removing detail, but it seems to accomplish the reverse. Jamie Lee Curtis's face is hyper-smoothed, but the grain is still there, as if the algorithm targeted her skin itself. Lines appear too deep because of the over-sharpening, which is exaggerated even more by how smooth the rest of the face is in comparison, giving the actress a borderline ghoulish appearance. The small facial nuances of performances are plastered over by the AI's bullshit, turning even the most basic emotions weird. What used to be human expressions of affection have become cold mechanical simulations, wrought from the jaws of rubber-skinned apparitions masquerading in the places of ones once called Curtis and Governator. The over-sharpening produces so many halos that even the simplest shots look green-screened, undermining a lot of the very real, very expensive stunts that were done in-camera. There are also odd color banding issues. A few shots are aliased to the point of looking like they were pulled from a laserdisc. There's not much information about the sources used for this remaster, so it's hard to say what's going wrong here. And it's hard to compare against past releases because the film never came to Blu-ray, adding insult to injury that this is the only modern version fans will get. Now, I'm no expert. I haven't seen all movies, but I'd feel safe calling this one of the worst film restorations ever done, because I've never laughed out loud at a fucking remaster before. This is almost worthy of a bad movie night with friends, where you drink every time the AI fucks something up. It starts looking like shit from literally the first moment a human being is on screen. As reviled as Terminator 2's 4K is, it's by far the better looking disc by virtue of having some good looking shots. True Lies looks like the entirety of the film was generated frame by frame in DALL-E. Aliens is the release I was really excited for, and it barely fares any better. All of the same issues are here, but with even less stable image quality. Vasquez starts the shot as an amorphous blob before the AI starts to put a mouth on her cheek, then realizes no, that's not it, and puts a cartoon butthole in, which would be a perfect fit for a little corncob pipe, by the way, and then it gives her Pennywise makeup to cap things off. Nailed it. This is not cherry-picked. Faces melt and warp like this throughout the entire movie, and even when the AI isn't completely fucking something up, it still looks off. Pores get unsharp masked into bullet holes. Pixels that shouldn't connect are joined together to form waxy fractal-like patterns, similar to what you get when using smoothing filters on old video games. It took years of advancement and superpowered tensor cores for Park Road to achieve XBRZ technology. It again results in extremely unflattering close-ups, making Sigourney Weaver look a decade older than before. The noise reduction occasionally goes haywire and seems to mistake grain for clothing or skin detail, resulting in pixels frozen in place for the duration of a scene. Haloing is a major issue in this release as well, with even Ripley holding a cat looking like some kind of composite effect, and the overly fluid, dreamlike renderings continue to make practical scenes look like CGI. The Blu-ray release of Aliens was not exactly a prize itself, having apparently undergone some process at Lowry involving heavy grain removal, sharpening, and fake grain reinsertion afterward, along with the colors getting a major teal push. But despite that mangling, the image holds up and is more enjoyable because you're not constantly tumbling down the uncanny valley like fucking Homer Simpson in the Springfield Gorge. Some may write this off as nitpicking, but there's no such thing when it comes to 4K, a format premised on the display of every last minute detail. I didn't seek out faults frame by frame. I paused the movies only when something was actively drawing my attention, which was at least once every few minutes, enough that I ran out of scrap paper watching these. Professional reviewers seem predisposed to give releases like this good marks simply because the level of detail has increased, but it shouldn't count when that detail is nonsensical garbage. Some major outlets sidestep talking about the AI altogether. Why? If you're already deep diving into and offering opinions on the tech behind movie releases, why draw an arbitrary line at this tech specifically? If AI is being considered for future restorations, isn't right now the most important time to judge its performance? I think the assessment of any reasonable person would be that this upscaling was simply not good enough for a major commercial release yet, possibly the final home format release at that. So why use it? Why wasn't a standard 4K scan and cleanup good enough, given how well that served other releases? Barring some kind of late revelation proving otherwise, it seems the answer is that they didn't even bother to do a new scan in the first place. Internet forums have melted down bickering over this, but there's been some confirmation that Aliens used the finished 2K master from 2010. Just looking at the disc itself backs that up. Underneath the AI-generated horror show, the 4K is basically the old Blu-ray again. I realize not everyone watching is fully nerded up on the details of 4K, and a few people will probably end up seeing this in HDR, so I'll explain what these spiromographs mean. SDR content had a peak brightness of 100 nits, which is basically nothing in terms of the light you see on a daily basis. The high dynamic range of 4K enables films to be mastered for 10,000 nits of peak brightness, although most stop at just 1,000. When tastefully handled, the wider range greatly increases the contrast and realism of the image, and often restores highlight details that were clipped in SDR transfers. Aliens has a soft cap of 200 nits according to Resolve scopes, in other words, SDR+, which means that a thermonuclear explosion ends up being less bright than the Ghostbusters lobby. Not every film needs HDR cranked up to max levels, and some filmmakers choose not to use it, revered cinematographer Roger Deakins being among them. But after seeing HDR fully utilized in the first Alien, as well as the films that inspired its visuals like 2001: A Space Odyssey, the complete lack of it here feels less like an artistic choice and more that they just took the SDR transfer and turned a knob. The fake DR also creates blown out, unnatural highlights on skin and other surfaces. The higher white level still improves the image, but you could probably get better results boosting the Blu-ray yourself in a single afternoon. It's borderline false advertising to list HDR as a feature on the box. Wide color spectrum is another selling point of 4K that doesn't really apply here. Of the colors the human eye can see, Blu-ray's 709 standard covered roughly 35%. 4K uses 2020, which covers about 75%. This allows new film scans to deliver color that could never be seen before, and most negatives have plenty to offer. Vertigo, a film from 1958, is absolutely loaded with previously out-of-gamut color. Suspiria has some shots where more color exists outside of the old 709 space than within it. Aliens is mostly restrained to the 709 color space.
Mostly.
Color sometimes seeps outside of that standard, mostly blues and mostly on effect shots, but not to the extent I've seen when scanning through other 4Ks. Ghostbusters, a fairly undersaturated movie shot on the same stock, has much more wide gamut color than this. It all suggests they fed the Blu-ray to the AI and didn't really check what it ended up shitting out. The only legitimate upgrade here is that the metallic teal grading has been reined in, but the better color is more than offset by everything else. It's extremely disappointing after the stunning 4K release of Alien, which got just the kind of straightforward treatment I was glorifying earlier. The film was allowed to be film, and the grain doesn't hurt anything. Faces don't mutate when more than 5 feet from the camera. The HDR is flashy but well judged, blasting up to 1000 nits when appropriate. It makes it hard not to wonder what Aliens might have looked like had they just done a normal restoration. True Lies is mostly the same story, a 200 nit cap for the entire duration. The snow scenes in particular are badly blown out. Again, I'm an ignorant YouTuber, not a professional colorist, but I have to imagine a real HDR grade would have recovered more highlight detail than this. And like Aliens, there's just a small amount of wide gamut color and only a handful of shots. Supposedly this one was scanned in 4K but was the first remaster of the batch, which if true makes the AI even more impressively terrible that it did this to a native 4K image. According to the same source, Titanic and The Abyss came last, also using 4K scans, and they mostly look okay.
Mostly.
The Abyss even bucks the HDR trend and makes frequent use of the headroom above 200 nits. The AI is still noticeable in these, and you can see it fading in and out just like the others, but it's not offensive. The worst I can say about these two is that close-ups have a hyper-real quality to them, with so much sharpening that they don't look like normal faces anymore. Ed Harris looks like a pile of sandpaper come to life. It's unnecessary and off-putting, and even distracting in some of the most pivotal scenes, but you can mostly ignore those shots and still enjoy the movies. James Cameron hyped these releases up in interviews, claiming every pixel of every frame had been scrutinized. He acknowledged the importance of getting a 4K release right, as this may be the last format we get, especially in a streaming-only world, where services will only host the new 4K transfers and discard older ones. These could be the versions we end up looking at for a very, very long time. Despite being fully aware of the stakes when preparing his filmography for posterity, Cameron still pressed the "just fuck my shit up" button, binding this early beta technology to his films for all time.
Pretty darn good.
It is at least in the same ballpark as George Lucas fusing 90s CGI into Star Wars. If it sounds like I'm vilifying Cameron too much, just keep in mind that I chose to do this video because I love his work. He's a genius who has made some of the most successful movies in history, which is why it matters when he makes terrible decisions about them. At least in the case of Aliens, there's a problematic film stock to blame.
Kodak was in transition. They hadn't worked out their T-grain emulsion, so it turned out to be grainier than I would have wanted.
Cameron would have gone to town with AI noise reduction no matter what, and maybe they figured a new scan would just add more grain to remove. The Blu-ray also had digital fixes that would have to be redone with a new scan, but working from an already heavily manipulated 2K master clearly did the AI no favors. Some of the weird anomalies in this version seem to be rooted in the AI not understanding damage or distortion from that master. Other films claimed to have used the same Eastman stock have mostly turned out alright on 4K. Seeing the same actress on the same film in Ghostbusters makes for a clear comparison. It's grainy as hell, but pleasant to watch and takes full advantage of the 4K format. If this is what a straight Aliens restoration would have looked like, I'd take it over the drippy Picasso edition. Another possibility is that Cameron didn't really give a shit. He made it very clear that these transfers were a burden he didn't have time for, and maybe AI was just the fastest and easiest way to get from point A to point B. Whatever the reason was, there's arguably another set of films in that Star Wars zone now, where the burden of a high-quality restoration falls to fans and whatever surviving reels they can find. If there's a silver lining, it's that the original negatives are probably still available for another studio to take a crack at them, if someone darted and gagged Cameron first.
And cut.
The point of this video is not AI bad. There have been deep learning upscales that have turned out better than this. If AI had been used in a more targeted way, like fixing these horrendous stunt double face swaps, that would have been fine. It could even help with the most manual of manual restorations.
And the film prints, some have better color, some seem to have more detail. That piece of information probably exists on another print. And when you combine the data from, in this case, 4 other prints, that's the new level of detail that we're talking about. In order for that to work, those pieces of film have to be precisely aligned. At the time that I was developing this, there was no software tool that could do this.
If AI could automate these tasks, it could empower fans to accomplish things never before possible with degraded prints. The point is that it has to be used carefully, and the main problem with these remasters is that it was not. And it's up to you, the customer, to decide whether or not that matters. If the disc sells either way, then the Park Road treatment gets normalized, and maybe other studios will decide to take this cheaper and faster route. There's a debate to have here, because obviously Terminator 2's 4K sucking didn't stop this from happening. But buying these releases certainly isn't going to help. The Terminator especially is on a precarious edge, being the last major Cameron movie still on Blu-ray. The only slim chance it doesn't end up as another AI shit show is if people make enough noise about these releases. So if you've had your eye on one of these 4Ks, consider avoiding them, because they're trash. I bought them for this video, sure, but specifically so I could tell you not to, so you see, it makes perfect sense. Aliens in particular is a fraud. It's not real 4K, not real HDR, not really wide color. If you have the Blu-ray, you can get better results dropping it into gigapixel. We have Aliens 4K at home. With businesses conspiring to force physical media into an early grave, we're on the cusp of adorably losing ownership and control of our history. The decisions we make right now and the practices we choose to accept could matter a lot for the future of our culture, dictating what we can watch and how we watch it. I think it's fair to say that AI is now another factor in that mix. So look Vasquez right in the face, butthole, and decide for yourself if this is the future you want to support.
Yazırmış Cameron. Samşapşın aymal fezon mayşi. Did you still love it?
I'd rather be his whore than your wife.
I'd rather be his whore than your wife.
Let's rock! Let's rock! Let's rock! Let's rock! Let's rock! Let's rock!
Ninguém.